Okay. Can you clap your hands?
Just anytime.
Yeah.
Episode 2.
Hello and welcome to the Woodsman's podcast for July 2018, brought to you by Furnace Creek Productions and available to watch at youtube.com/Working Class Woodsman or at iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Google Play, Podbean, or your favorite podcast app. Just search for the Woodsman's podcast. Whatever your platform, please subscribe, tell your friends, and leave a positive review. This is a monthly podcast in which we talk about hunting, harvesting, foraging, and fishing from the perspective of a New England woodsman, specifically New Hampshire, where we are now. I'm not a woodsman, but the woodsman is Ed Butler, who spent much of his life in the woods or on the lakes, gaining a lifelong knowledge of such things, although he would be the first person to tell you that he doesn't know everything, which, when you think about it, is actually a sign of wisdom. You may know him as the Working Class Woodsman on YouTube and Instagram. He's also on Patreon, more about that later, and also on Twitter, but Twitter can't handle long usernames, so follow WC Woodsman 603 on Twitter, and everywhere else it's Working Class Woodsman, all one word. So, Ed, this is episode 2. We had an amazing first episode. So if you're listening for the first time today, go back and listen to the first one, please. And today we're going to be talking about the Maine Sportsman, which is a magazine, the Maine Sportsman's opinion poll, questions about hunting in Maine. But first, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see that the cover is a memoriam to Lefty Kreh, who passed away this year. He was born in 1925. Could you just tell us who Lefty Kreh is?
I didn't obviously know him personally, but he was just a well-known, accomplished, very liked fly fisherman. And I'm only making an assumption that he was left-handed. But that's about all I know. I just I know that he had quite a legacy behind him, you know, in the fly fishing world or the fishing world actually. And I did want to point out he's holding a smallmouth bass, which
on the cover there,
yeah, which is
I actually wanted to ask you because I re-listened to the previous episode, and we won't get too far into it because you can just go listen to the first episode, but I don't know what the difference is between a small mouth and a largemouth, other than the obvious assumption.
Smallmouth bass, the difference is, first of all, the smallmouth obviously has a smaller mouth.
Right.
And the other difference in a largemouth bass is they have what they call a lateral line. And if you look down the side, there's a very distinct lateral line. Yeah. Those are the visual distinctions. Smallmouth tend to be a warmer water fish.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Largemouth tend to be a warmer water fish, more prevalent down south. And we have tons and tons, unfortunately, tons and tons of largemouth around here. I only say that because they tend to take over where the smallmouth were originally better fit. Being from New England, you tend to be a smallmouth fisherman. Largemouth are great and fun to catch and this and that, but when largemouth come in, they tend to take over. But anyway, so the difference is smallmouth have a smaller mouth, and they're also a colder. They're better off in colder water, colder temperatures.
What about their overall size, though?
Largemouth get bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the state record is. I think the state record for New Hampshire on smallmouth is like 8 pounds something off the top of my head. But and largemouth is up around, I don't know, 11 or 12 maybe. Here I go again, throwing out information.
Yes,
correct.
So we're also going to, later in the episode, we're going to do a corrections section. You wanted to correct something that you had said in the previous episode. And also, just for our listeners, I'm somebody who, I grew up in Maine. I grew up playing in the woods, but not really hunting or doing any of those things that Ed has done. So I see my role as maybe the audience ombudsman, the person who stands in for the audience, for people who are listening to this to learn more about being in the woods and hunting and harvesting and foraging and fishing. I don't know about those things, so I'm going to ask lots of questions. And I think that we're going to end up with a situation where it will be interesting for both people who do have the knowledge and people who don't have the knowledge. So that's what I see my role as. And I'm asking questions because I'm genuinely interested and also ignorant.
Well, you bring up good questions, though. I'd like to point out.
Thank you. So we're going to go through this 2018 Maine Sportsman's opinion poll. And
I just would like to point out this is pointed towards the state of Maine, not because the New Hampshire and Maine have different laws pertaining to different species and so forth. But this is pointed towards the state of Maine. But we're gonna go through it anyway.
Right. So it's Maine laws. So keeping that in mind, we are currently we live in New Hampshire. And this is specifically for Maine, and people listening around the country will be in different parts of the country. So always check your own local laws. But this will be informative nevertheless. So, number 1, should the required archery hunting education course be combined with the required crossbow hunting education into one course covering both activities? Well, that seems kind of obvious to me.
My knee-jerk reaction to that is no.
Oh, really?
No, because they're two different weapons for one thing. Or they're two different devices.
Gotcha.
I don't see how you can. I think a crossbow. And again, I'd like to point out this is an opinion poll, so it's more. They're asking for your opinion. It doesn't mean yes, But my opinion of that is no. I think that a crossbow and a traditional bow and arrow and a compound bow are two different things. So I don't think that should be included in that. That's
okay, so despite that they both have types of arrows, they even have different types of arrows,
what a crossbow
right?
is, right?
I know what a crossbow is. I've seen Robin Hood.
You see a difference between this?
Yeah, no, I got you.
And a 3 to 9 scope, right? Okay, yeah. I mean, where does it stop, right?
I've watched The Green Arrow. I know these things.
My opinion is no, they shouldn't be combined.
They shouldn't be because it's not anywhere not similar. Just like say a shotgun and a rifle. It's totally different. Okay, number 2. Do you believe some landowners abuse the preference given to them in the any deer permit drawings? Okay, first of all, I have no idea what that means.
And unfortunately, I don't really understand how that works. I think, from what I understand, is in Maine, again, if you, as a landowner, you can put in for permits for an any deer take. In other words, because Maine is bucks only without a doe permit.
Wow.
Okay, do you follow me? So you can only, in other words, unless you have a doe permit in the state of Maine, you have to shoot a buck, and they issue so many doe permits a year. And I think there's some exemption for certain landowners that they can apply for. And I apologize if I'm getting this wrong, but they can put in for an any deer permit. And I don't know where the abuse comes. I don't really understand the question because I'm not sure what that.
So the issue though is does and bucks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Antlerless, any deer is considered either a doe or a buck. Antlerless is obviously a doe.
Okay. So that would probably be, it's yes or no, but you would probably say, don't know.
Well, where there's a will, there's a way, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So number 3, should the applications filed by landowners for preference in any deer permit drawings be open to public inspection?
I believe so.
Yeah, I just always favor, if it comes to the government, openness.
Well, and again, it's if you're taking a resource from the state, I think it's public information. That's my take on it, I guess.
Number 4, have you removed all lead sinkers and lead split shot from your freshwater tackle boxes?
Yes.
So is this was there a recent law in Maine outlawing lead? Probably.
In New Hampshire.
I
think it was 2016. As of, you can no longer use lead 1 ounce or less or under an inch long. You can't use any lead sinkers or jigs or,
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Because of the loons. Because of the loons, yeah. The loons can eat it and get lead. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah. Number 5, did you hunt coyotes within the past year?
I did not. I did the year before.
Yeah, the year before. Yep. I remember you had a video about it.
Yep.
tracking a coyote, and actually a coyote ran through our backyard yesterday.
Yeah.
I had a game camera out a couple weeks ago and caught a very young coyote, and I'll put up a picture of it maybe on the YouTube video, and it ran through the yard yesterday.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and we have a big old barn, and it went into the barn to like cool off because it was really hot yesterday. So it's kind of like I saw it run by, and then I wanted to mow the lawn, and my lawnmower's in the barn, but I waited for like 5 hours because
you would have gone in the chicken shed, but that's where the black bear sleeps, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Number 6, should a person be allowed to live trap red squirrels without obtaining a trapping license? Now, hold on a second. Do you need
It's a question. My opinion is no. I don't think you should have to obtain a trapping license permit to trap red squirrels.
Right. So should a person be allowed to live trap red squirrels without a license? You say yes.
I say yes.
Yeah. But this is so. I mean, for instance, I have a hard trap in the backyard for about a month this spring.
I've seen your trapping practices. You're fine.
Trying to get rid of squirrels. Is that what they're talking about? Or are they talking about?
Yeah. Live trap. Yeah, putting a heart out for red squirrels.
I mean, the way they phrase this question makes it sound like currently you have to get a license.
Interpretation is a wonderful thing when it comes to reading this stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Maine is crazy. Okay. 7.
We love Maine. We do.
7. I was born in Maine.
Yeah, we love Maine.
7. Virtually all of Maine's navigable rivers and streams have been channelized, bulldozed, dynamited, straightened, or otherwise altered to facilitate driving of logs, which ended in 1976. Should the state begin a program to restore our rivers to provide better habitat for fish and wildlife?
Yes, I believe they should, and they do. When they're talking about like fish ladders and stuff like that, you familiar with that term?
Like if there's a dam or
so the fish can get around the dam. There's a lot of that's a bigger problem. That's a bigger problem than it seems. But I think they should, and in many cases they are. They're making those attempts to try to bring the rivers back to bring it back to a natural state for like native brook trout, for instance. They need those cold areas. Now,
so that'll also mean that the rivers kind of move around a little bit too.
As far as what?
Don't the rivers sort of move around a little bit? They kind of over time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, unless we just keep putting the rivers where we want them. But traditionally, that's what we do.
Yeah.
It's a big problem.
Yeah. I mean, well, especially if you own land right next to it, and then half of your land is gone or on the other side of the river.
Yeah.
If your boundary is marked as like to the water, that's a problem if the water moves.
You're still paying taxes on it. Yeah. But it's disappearing.
Number 8. Did you hunt with a crossbow in the past year? No.
Oh, no.
Did you hunt with a muzzle loader?
Yes.
In the past year?
Yes. Every year.
And what do you use that for?
Whitetail.
Whitetail?
Yep. Whitetail. There's a muzzle in New Hampshire. New Hampshire's opposite of Maine. New Hampshire, we have our muzzleloader season before firearms. Mm-hmm. It's the other way around in Maine. They do the muzzleloader after.
Okay. Number 10. It is unlawful in Maine to hunt with an auto-loading rifle with a magazine with a capacity of more than 5 cartridges. Should it be unlawful to possess an auto-loading rifle with a magazine having a capacity of more than 5 cartridges? So you can't hunt with it, but it's legal to have.
Don't you love the way they word that question? Yeah. No, it's 2 different questions as far as I'm concerned. In other words, owning a rifle that holds a high now this is a whole other argument. Yeah. But if you own a rifle that holds a high capacity, has a high capacity magazine, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to own that. It has nothing to do with what you use for deer hunting. So there's 2
Right. Yeah, these are different issues.
Now, but now again, interpretation. In the state of New Hampshire, you cannot deer hunt with a rifle containing more than 5 rounds in the magazine. Period. So, but people interpret that.
Now, can you
as,
shoot a deer more than once? I mean,
Well,
what's the goal of this law?
Well, no, but the idea is they don't want you walking around with 20-round magazines hunting deer. That's the whole point of it, and I understand that. That's valid, okay. But the way that a lot of people used to think, like in New Hampshire, for instance, was you couldn't hunt with any magazine that held over 5 rounds. That's not the case. The way the law reads is it not containing more than 5.
Oh.
So you follow me? But I mean, I'm not. Who's going to carry around a 20-round clip?
So wait a minute. So were you just saying is that you could have a magazine that could potentially have more bullets in it, but you only put 5 into it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In New Hampshire now, as far as Maine goes, I think it's the same. But in, like, say for New Hampshire, for instance, you can only go out with 5 rounds in your firearm. Period.
Yeah.
Even though the gun will hold more than that.
Gotcha.
But people read it as it's confusing.
Yeah.
It's interpretation. Yeah,
some of these laws just seem silly.
Well, that's how some of these bills and stuff get put in front of legislature, and then they become laws. And you gotta pay. That's why we're going through this. Is you got to pay attention to what they're throwing out there.
So this next question is pretty good. Number 11. Do you believe deer hunting regulations have become too complicated?
No. It would be nice if they spoke English.
Right.
I don't think so. No, I don't think they've become too complicated. I think interpretation people have a hard time interpreting them sometimes. Mm-hmm. But my answer to that is no. I don't think they've become too complicated.
Okay. Number 12. Do you believe... Okay. This... Number 12. Do you believe global warming is a real environmental threat?
Yes.
I thought it was last week when it didn't rain for 2 weeks and it was very, very hot. But
again, we could talk all day about that subject. Yeah. But in a nutshell, yes, I think it's an issue. As far as the planet, the oceans, the food patterns, all that is affected by global warming, and I think it's real.
Okay, so I just think that there is no such thing as stasis. And the global climate has always changed. Always, for billions of years. And like I said, I could go on for an hour about this.
But the question is, if global warming, if the Earth warms up for a period of time, is it a problem?
Yes. Sure. Yeah, well, maybe, because in other ways it might not be, because it might... certain things might grow that didn't grow before in places that
it changes everything.
I think that there would be good things and bad things. I just want to tell a little tiny story about when I was out in Montana in Glacier National Park, and I took a tour with one of the park rangers, and they were talking about the this animal called I think it was called the hoary marmots, and they live up in the mountains, in the Rockies there in Glacier National Park in northern Montana. And the park ranger was saying, it's getting warmer, so they're having to head north. And I said, well, so how long have they lived in this area? And she said, since the Little Ice Age, which is 300 years ago. So basically, this animal came down from Canada during the Little Ice Age, and it was the 1500s through the 1800s because it was colder, mm-hmm. and it's lived there now for a couple hundred years. But the previous 10,000 years, it lived in northern Canada. So what's normal?
Well, and I think we tend to forget. We often tend to look at a time span as our lifespan.
Right.
Whereas,
and that's human, I guess.
100 years is nothing. I mean,
in the scope of life.
What was going on? What was going on here 4,000 years ago?
Yeah,
we know, but we don't know.
Right.
Right. I think if the Earth does warm up, yes, it causes changes, it causes problems, but compared to what?
Right.
I don't know.
Right. So. Yeah, and Glacier National Park is also named after the glaciers from the Little Ice Age, not from like the glaciers that formed the continent that were, melted 10,000 years ago. But anyway, okay. That's, a very fraught question, I guess.
I knew that was going to stick in your craw.
It's very political. Let's move on. 13. Should DIFNW establish a program to improve spawning habitat for trout and salmon? So Department of Interior, Fish and Wildlife.
Yeah, yes. However, there's more. Again, the quick answer, yes. Okay. My follow-up to that is good luck. Because there are so many other problems with salmon spawning, going out to sea and coming back. There are so many other issues that they don't know if they can fix ever. And a lot of that is because of the Earth. The ocean has warmed up over the last 50 or 60, 70 years, whatever. It's pushed the bait fish follows the zooplankton, if you will.
Uh-huh.
So the salmon follow the bait fish, and if that it changes the migration route of the fish.
Right.
And so, even the smolts that they put in, the baby salmon, very small percentage of those ever come back to spawn.
Okay.
So we can fix the rivers. We can bring those rivers right back to where they were 100 years ago. If we could miraculously do that, that doesn't mean the salmon are going to come back based on what's going on in the rest of the world. It's a huge, huge problem.
Right.
So short answer, yes. The second answer is good luck.
Right. So we could, so they'll go somewhere else. It's not like
they'll live. Yeah. Well, and Canada has been experiencing the same issue.
So we're like providing the fishermen in Nova Scotia with.
Well, there's a lot of things that change. Like for instance, when capelin is what salmon tend to feed on, which is basically like a smelt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they feed on zooplankton. Well, the temperature that gets pushed around according to temperature. So the salmon follow the food source. So which changes their migration route. So they'll just migrate other places. Whereas like I think it was the Penobscot used to be one of the, if not the best salmon fishery in the world, or definitely on the East Coast. Yeah. I'm sorry, this side, and now it's so it. But again, it's so much. Even though the timber industry did most of the damage, let's say, in building the dams and so on and so forth. Which we need dams for electricity.
Right.
All right. Because don't forget, humans are nature too. But, however, there's so much else that's changed. It's a bigger picture. You can't just fix like one thing and expect everything to come back to the way it was. It's like, no, it's a big problem.
Yeah, it's a thing of unintended consequences. Like, we're going to fix this.
Exactly.
But you're pulling a piece out of a Jenga tower, and
So I'm not saying that don't make any attempt, but it's a bigger problem than just straightening out the rivers.
Okay, so number 14. How many questions are there?
Too many.
Too many. All right. 14. Should ice fishing be allowed on 14. Should ice fishing be allowed on some salmon and trout waters now closed each winter if anglers use artificial lures?
If the biologists do their studies and they say that they deem that necessary, yes. I don't know. I don't know enough about that to answer yes or no. If it's going to be detrimental to the fish population, no. If the fishery can handle it, yes. I mean that's
right.
That's how I look at it. It's kind of common sense.
And what's the distinction between artificial lures and live bait?
Well, live bait is like if you buy smelt or shiner and let it swim around. Artificial bait is anything man-made.
Right. But I mean, like, why are they saying?
Because artificial bait, you tend to just hook the fish and you can release it.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Let me back up. So a live bait, they tend to swallow it. So when you,
I see.
Yeah. So even though you cut the line, the mortality rate of those fish tend to not be so favorable.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So really, if you're using live bait, you need to keep the fish and eat it.
Well, you can cut the line and let it go, but no one's got a crystal ball. I mean, a lot of those fish don't live. You can kid yourself all you want. A lot of the fish we catch on barbless hooks. Like in a lot of the streams in Maine, you can only use a barbless hook. A lot of those fish, especially in the warm summer months when brook trout are looking to be in cooler water, when it gets up around 65 degrees and above, they're struggling anyway. So if you exhaust that fish bringing it in, in 70-degree water, I don't know. The more
Right.
those fish may not survive, especially at 3-pound brookie.
So again, unintended consequences. You're like, oh, I'm using a barbless hook because
you're doing the right thing,
but you still might.
Depending on the size of the fish, the age of the fish, the water temperature, there's a lot of factors in that. I mean, it definitely it makes the odds better for the fish to survive. Yes.
Number 15. Should cat owners be prohibited from allowing their cats to run at large, as is now the case with dogs? Well, that's pretty funny. I have 3 cats, and but they don't go outside. So,
my answer to that is no.
We tried to put a harness on one of our cats once when we were taking him to the vet, and it was impossible. Like, I finally got it on him, and then he just backed right out of it. So, I don't think that's, Okay, number 16. Has the turkey population expanded to the point that the state should end the 2-bird seasonal tag limit for the spring season and allow the taking of 1 tom turkey each day?
Each day?
Yeah. So you mentioned in a previous episode that in New Hampshire, I think you get 1 bird in the spring, right?
Yeah, 1 in the spring, 1 in the fall.
And it sounds like
that seems excessive.
In Maine they have 2 birds per season.
Well, we do too, spring and fall.
Yeah, but this says 2-bird seasonal tag limit for the spring season.
Yeah, and I think 1 bird a day is a little excessive.
Especially, if it's like a month long.
Yeah.
I guess you might get tired after 3 days. But
actually, quickly, since we're on turkeys, that is one of the corrections I want to make. I said the reintroduction program was in the 70s or 80s. As well, if you go on Fish and Game's website and look at it, it says they made an attempt in 1969, which failed, and then they reintroduced them in 1975. So I think I said 70s or 80s. The information online says 1975.
That's more of a clarification.
That's a clarification, a correction.
Than a correction.
I didn't. I wasn't just trying to. I don't want to pass off false information.
There are. It has been a wildly successful reintroduction.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
They were.
But I think 1 bird a day is a little excessive. Personally, I don't know, but so I would say no.
Number 17, is the dumping of household goods and tires causing landowners to post their property?
Yes.
Yeah, if I were a property owner and a hunter came on my property and littered, I'd be mad. And
well, I think what they're trying to ask you though, do you think there are other aside from hunting, if someone's using your field to dump piles of rotted out sheetrock, you'd be apt to post your land.
Yeah.
So, I think the answer to that question.
So it's not necessarily hunters who are leaving.
No, I think they're trying to point out there are other reasons that people are posting their land.
Yeah,
and that may be one of them.
Yeah.
So I'd say I don't know how much of that's actually going on, but if they're asking, that's the question they're asking. So
question number 18: should buyers of auto and truck tires pay a returnable deposit, as we do on beverage bottles, which we would get back when we returned the used tires? So this is Maine, obviously. Again, we keep on saying that, but in New Hampshire, we don't have a deposit and on bottles. And various people have said to me, "Oh, it's you should. It's too bad because you get the 5 cents back if you have the deposit." It's like, yeah, but we don't pay it in the first place.
Right. Well, from another standpoint, I think overall, since they introduced bottle bills across the country, I think that tends to probably end up. What that translates to is less cans and bottles beside the road.
Maybe.
You think about it. I'm in favor of the bottle bill. You know what I'm saying? I think in New Hampshire we can collect aluminum cans and sell them for scrap. So you can recycle them, and they do get recycled. But so having said that, I think if there was a return for rubber tires, like if you could get like $5 for a tire bringing it back, I don't think you'd see too many tires lying around contaminating groundwater and creating mosquito habitat.
Yeah, I remember that when I was growing up.
Yeah,
tires around, and they collect the
mosquitoes.
Ugh.
Yeah, I think so I'd be in favor of that, to be honest with you. I think it would be productive. Now, what are you going to do with the tires? I don't know. Good luck. Yeah,
I don't know. It just seems like, to me, I would say no, because it it just seems like it's going to raise the cost of tires, and it's
But you get it back.
well, but some people are gonna still just dump them,
I get it.
and then
But somebody will say, but if you see a tire laying beside the road, you're going to grab it and go get your $5.
well, it is true that at least in like New York State, that does incentivize homeless people to pick up bottles and cans and stuff, and so that helps clean up bottles.
I think it wouldn't hurt any, But anyway, good luck.
Where are we? Okay, number 19. Should anglers be encouraged to kill any pike that they catch?
Yeah. In Maine, they have a serious problem with pike, northern pike, taking over many fisheries.
Mm-hmm.
They've also encouraged, I think, they're trying to encourage like catch and kill pike tournaments. They want to get them. They want to get rid of them because they're such an invasive species.
Yeah, that's the next question. Number 2. Should Fish and Wildlife the Department of Fish and Wildlife encourage catch and kill pike tournaments?
If they're that detrimental, again, not being a biologist and not really knowing the numbers and the stats, but if the pike are that detrimental to the salmon and trout fisheries, then I would say yes.
What's the deal with the pike? Like, were they reintroduced, or were they
were put in illegally?
They were put in illegally.
So were the bass.
Yeah,
they're not indigenous. No, I mean,
right.
So, and when a smallmouth, see, the thing is smallmouth, and the reason I like smallmouth is because they're very, very hardy fish. They reproduce on their own. You don't have to, but
so you don't have to stock them the way that,
No, but people do it illegally, which causes these problems.
Right.
Especially with northern pike, because a northern pike can eat a salmon.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. A good sized northern pike can. Oh yeah, and a trout. So the small, if they could spawn and reproduce, they would get eaten by the northern pike. I mean, that's a big problem in Maine.
Number 21. Should income from bear bait hunting sites leased by landowners be taxed, with the revenue going to the Department of Fish and Wildlife? So let me just rephrase that. If there's a landowner who's leasing their land to a hunter who is baiting bears, should the hunter is paying the landowner to use their land, should that income be taxed?
No.
Why not?
And I'll tell you why. There's two ways to answer that. I'm all in favor of getting more money to the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife so they can do these programs. However, being a bear hunter, okay, I know how hard it is to get landowners to let you on their land to hunt in the first place.
Right.
Now, after I've sold them on the idea of hunting bear on their land, now I got to tell them, oh, by the way, you got to pay tax on it and send it into the government. So
file another form and
so it's just, in my opinion, my personal opinion, and having dealt with landowners and people over the years, it's hard enough to get them to sign permits so you can hunt or trap. When you start saying, now you got to pay taxes on it, and here's a form, and now everyone's going to know you're making, find another way. But I don't think if I'm paying you to hunt on your land, it's your business what you do, and you're obligated to pay your tax. But that's your civic responsibility, and I have nothing to do with it.
I mean, currently, I guess it's just straight income. It's just it's income.
Yeah.
So you are paying. Well, in Maine, they have an income tax.
Yeah. So if you got 3 bear hunters that pay you, let's say, I'd throw a number out there. Just saying they're paying. I know it runs into a little bit of money.
Yeah.
But it's up to the landowner. In other words, it's their income, it's their business to pay the taxes on it. That's my opinion. So no, I think it's discouraging. The answer is no to that question.
Do you believe that DIF and W wardens are spread too thin to deter poachers?
Well, yeah. Yeah, I know. Certainly in the case of New Hampshire, New Hampshire has a hard. I don't think. Yeah.
Do you have any idea how many there are
in New Hampshire,
in Maine and New Hampshire?
I think. Again, I'm throwing it out there.
We'll look it up and we'll put it in the description.
Yeah, it's
in the show notes.
About 50.
Yeah,
and that and don't forget, not all 50 guys are working the same. They've got all days off and this and that, so they're spread pretty thin.
Right.
They're spread pretty thin. I mean, there's a lot of. I mean, as you ask somebody else, they'll say we got too many. So you're going to get a couple different answers to that. But I think they're probably spread as thin as they could be or should be. But you'll get difference of opinions on that question.
Number 24. When wardens spend time on search and rescue activities unrelated to fish and game activities, should the state's general fund pay for their time? So I know exactly what this means because a friend of mine is actually the minister to the Maine wardens, Kate Braystrip, and she has told me that, in fact, if there is any crime in the woods, it's the jurisdiction of the wardens. So if there's a murder in the woods, it's the jurisdiction of the wardens. So that's not, related to hunting.
Right.
And also in the North Country, in the county, some places there isn't going to be, a local law enforcement officer who can get there. And so the wardens might take point on whatever it happens to be. So they are doing more law enforcement things that aren't really related to hunting and fishing and all of that. So should they get paid out of the general fund?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wish I knew what the numbers were.
Yeah.
Like how much time do they spend going on like unrelated? And what are they talking about unrelated? Like a hiker?
Well, there's also people get lost in the woods.
Well, yeah.
And then they have to go find
fishing game. Yeah, yeah. Well, in New Hampshire, we used to have issues with people, lost hikers. They wanted to charge them for being negligent.
Right.
Which I had no problem with personally.
Right. Like sometimes when people, get stuck on a mountain and a helicopter has to come in.
Let me ask you this: if you get in an accident on your way to the post office, they're going to charge you to ride in that ambulance to go to the hospital, right?
Yeah, well, the ambulance company is going to charge you.
Okay,
yeah.
So if you got to be airlifted off Mount Washington in February, I mean, to me, I mean, if there's
who's going to pick up that bill? Like, why do the taxpayers have to pick that up?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's a sore subject.
But what would happen? What should happen is that you should be able to get some kind of like woodsman's insurance policy or hiking insurance policy. Where you.
Don't be you. Amazingly, there are ways that you can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if you're gonna go hike, say you want to hike the presidential, mountain range.
Traverse. You want to do a
President's Day in February when it's gonna,
which
be
they
a
do all
snowstorm.
the time. I've done it personally.
Yeah. So you should have an insurance policy just in case.
Well, you get your health insurance. Yeah. Well, in theory, if you have health insurance, but it's I'm sure Blue Cross Blue Shield is not really going to want to pay a Bell Huey and 6 mountain guides to go up and pull you frozen off the lake. So it's an interesting.
Don't forget also sometimes some of these people it's not only their own lives that they're putting at risk.
Well, that's the thing. We've had mountain rescue get killed. Trying to rescue negligent hikers.
Well, and I know, was it last year, Kate, again, my friend Kate Braystrip, who's the minister to the Maine wardens, was telling me about a really awful day near, I think, Freiburg, where one of the wardens who was, I think on his, I'm going to get the details wrong, but he was on his first or second week on the job or something like that, or he was training, and they were doing a water rescue on the river there, and he died. And somebody had gone out in a canoe and gotten swept away, and the wardens went to rescue them, and the young warden, he was in his early 20s, and he got thrown off the boat, hit his head on a rock, and died.
Fishing game, they can say what, and I'll get, I'll probably get ridiculed for saying this, but those guys take they take a lot of chances. They don't have an easy job.
Okay, so I'm going to skip to question 28 because you wanted to talk about this one specifically. So number 28, only 3% of all bears killed each year are harvested by trapping. To remove an emotional issue from future bear hunting debates, Should the state end the recreational trapping of bears?
No.
No, why not? First of all, what is
First of all,
recreational? What does that mean? That makes it sound like you're doing it for fun.
Emotional. It's an
Yeah.
emotional issue.
Yeah.
So they should stop.
Right.
Think about just the way they word the question.
Yeah.
The deal is, and this, if you want, and we could always just cut it. We could answer this, cut it, and continue on. Do the if we're running out of time.
Yeah, we're about 44.
So why don't we
minutes
we can do this question, and if we want to come back and do the other questions on another podcast, we could do that if that's what the people want to hear, or if you want to.
Yeah, so we've made it through about 25 questions, and there are 48 questions.
Yeah.
So if you want to, we're getting about to the end. We don't want to go on for 3 hours here, but if you want to hear the rest of these, we can hit them next month, and leave us a comment on YouTube and let us know what you'd like to hear. But yeah, let's talk about the bear trapping.
Well, the
problem, bear baiting, rather. Well, or no, trapping.
Oh, they want to end the. Well, they're trying to. They're saying because 3%, if my numbers are correct, I think 3% of those bear. We'll say 3% of those bear are caught by a foot snare. Okay. In the state of Maine, you can have one snare, and you're allowed 2 bear, one with a firearm, one with a trap. Okay. Now a trap, when they say trap, but what it basically is, it's a foot snare that's at ground level or below, and it can't close down to more than 2.5 inches. So if a cub gets caught, a cub can slip out.
Gotcha.
Okay, that's been the method and the means forever.
Now, this like a bear trap,
they're illegal. The big bear traps with the big teeth.
No. I mean, no. I was referring, just as what you were talking about.
Yeah.
Where it's set up, is there an indication so that if somebody's hiking through the woods, they don't step on it?
Yeah, no, you're not going to catch a person in it. No.
Okay. It's super obvious.
Well, it's not that. It's
And we are going to do an entire episode probably in September about hunting bears.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
We'll get into this in more detail.
What happened? The problem with bear hunting is they're trying to remove the method and the means of bear hunting. Okay, and I say they. I mean, there were if you remember back in 2014 when the Humane Society tried to, and they called it the Mainers for Fair Bear Hunting campaign, or whatever it was, and they were trying to outlaw trapping and baiting and hounds. And what the problem was that was headed up by it came out as if like some Kennebunkport soccer moms had this big committee to stop bear hunting. Well, it wasn't them. It was the Humane Society out of Washington D.C.
Right.
Put about almost $3 million into that act, trying to eliminate baiting and hound hunting and snaring. So. And it's because ultimately they want to stop hunting. Period. The Humane Society. Totally. They can say what they want. At the end of the day, they want to outlaw every means and way of hunting. Period.
So how many? I mean,
well, if 93% of the bear, which were harvested by a foot snare, which was only 3%, baiting and hounds, if 93% of those bear were harvested that way, how many bear do you think would have been taken if those methods were illegal? Right. See, the idea is if you can't outlaw the sport, outlaw the means.
Right.
So you're effectively doing the same thing. And the reason that those systems are allowed, baiting and hounding, is because of the eastern woodlands, the area that we live in. Those are the only means effective for harvesting bear. Whereas like out west or up in Alaska and Canada, where you can glass and see a bear at 200 yards and stalk and stealth and all that, it doesn't work that way around here. That's just not the deal.
So the reason that you would trap up here is because there's so much woods that you can't see a bear. You can't shoot a bear from a distance.
Well, it's not that you can't. It's just like it's
more
not
difficult.
apt. It's not apt to happen.
Yeah.
Because bears don't just lollygag out in the open during legal shooting hours.
Right.
They're basically nocturnal. Not to say in July you won't see one, attacking your bird feeder or something. I mean, that does happen. But, when it comes hunting season, they just don't hang around the middle of cornfields. They just don't do that. So effectively, to hunt them effectively, They let us, in New Hampshire, you can't trap bear in New Hampshire anyway. You never could. But, we do use baiting and hounds. And, again, and that was the other correction I wanted to make. And this is a correction because I think I said 834 bear were taken. It was actually 586, 270 female, 318.
So that's the actual number that
2017.
2017.
That were harvested.
And the goal, like they want a certain number to be
1,000.
taken. They wanted 1,000 and only
586.
Yeah, and the reason they say they want 1,000 to be harvested each year is why?
Because that's
explain that.
Because that's what the biologists tell them.
Right.
We need to.
It's to control the population of the bear.
Again, like go back to the state of Maine. I mean, their bear population has tripled in the last 10 years.
Right.
Tripled. Okay. Now, and then they're trying to say that we won't. They want to remove the means of hunting bear. So it's like they've already tripled.
Right.
Okay. The population has tripled using these three methods, and now you're saying that. So it just doesn't make sense.
Right. And so if you again, we'll do a whole episode about bears, but then what's going to happen? What's going to happen if like you can't go shoot one bear per year?
Well, if I can't go hunting bear, or no one, people can't effectively harvest bear, then that means I have no problem going to the bird feeder and watering my tomatoes with a 44 Magnum. I personally don't have an issue with that.
Right.
The people that want to pass these bills do.
Right. So
their answer is going to be call Fish and Game, have them deal with it. Well, Fish, again, I want to make a clarification. When I say humane society, there are two different humane societies, and you're very familiar with it.
Yeah.
The HSU, the Humane Society out of Washington, D.C., has nothing to do with these local shelters.
Right.
That relies solely on volunteer work, donations, and they're struggling.
Right.
To keep a roof over these animals' heads. The Humane Society puts these ads on television and get that make you think that your money, your $20 a month or whatever, is going to those shelters. It's not.
Right.
Less than 1% of their money goes to those shelters. That company, that organization, is dedicated to stop hunting. Period. And that's something
that's the national organization.
Yes, out of Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I would definitely say that. I mean, I volunteer at our local Humane Society, and I would definitely say local is always better. If you want to give money to the Humane Society, find your local Humane Society, and they do good work.
No. To be the devil's advocate, if you want to spend your money to stop hunting, then the Humane Society is the place to send it. But when you send $20 a month,
if you want to stop hunting, go ahead and send it.
Don't you think it's a bit deceiving that they're putting these ads on of dogs stuck out in the rain, freezing to death, and the sad music, and it's painful to watch, and I hate it. But but when you send that money's not going to those shelters. That money's not going to that dog. It's going to stop lion hunting in Africa. It's going to stop hunting deer in Louisiana. It's good.
Right.
Making trapping illegal in Minnesota or some foolish thing like that. I mean, that's what that money's spent on, and that's their raison d'etre, is to stop hunting and by any and all means. Anyway, that's just kind of on a rant, but I mean I'm not making this stuff up.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to talk a lot more about bears in September. And
when's it going to be September?
Yeah. We're almost there. This past week was very hot.
It's brutal.
Very brutal. So thank you for listening. That's episode 2. We're going to wrap this up because we could go on talking for another hour, but been going for about 50 minutes. And we thank you very much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Working Class Woodsman. And on YouTube now, you also have to click the bell icon to get notifications. The Woodsman's podcast is on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Google Play, or Podbean. You just have to search for the Woodsman's podcast. And all the links to all of those are also in the show description at the video on YouTube. So please tell your friends and leave a review, especially on iTunes. That really, really does help us. And listener Renegade498 gave us a 5-star out of 5 rating. And he says, excited to hear more. Looking forward to good regional discussion of all the stuff that may or may not fall under the nebulous umbrella of quote-unquote bushcraft here in northern New England. Thanks for that, Renegade 498. For now, that's all the nebulous time that we have. Thank you for listening. For the Woodsman's Podcast, I'm Max Ledoux. He is Ed Butler, the Working Class Woodsman. We'll talk to you next time. Have a good one.
Thanks for listening.